They say the darkest nights bring out the brightest lights, but nobody ever told me how blinding that light could be. It was 2:14 a.m. when Clara Thompson stood in the middle of her small kitchen in rural Iowa, holding her mother's antique lantern. The power had gone out again, and so had the heat. A blizzard was tearing through the town like it was trying to erase it off the map. But that wasn't what had Clara's hands trembling. It was the letter on the table. The one she hadn't opened in 3 days. The one from the oncology department in Des Moines. Her 10-year-old son, Mason, lay upstairs in bed, pale and too quiet. He hadn't been eating much. His hair had started falling out weeks ago. Clara had known what the letter would say even before the white envelope arrived. But she couldn't bring herself to read it. Because reading it meant accepting it. And accepting it meant surrendering. But Clara wasn't the kind of woman who surrendered. Clara had once been the valedictorian of her high school, set to go to college on a full scholarship. She was brilliant, full of dreams, and absolutely unafraid. But at 19, she got pregnant. The father, her high school sweetheart, left town before the baby was even born. Clara stayed, raising Mason with everything she had and everything she didn't. Working double shifts at the diner. Studying nursing at night. Putting her own dreams on hold to keep her boy fed, clothed, and safe. Mason was different from the other kids. He read books twice his grade level. He built miniature rockets in the garage and named them after stars. He once told Clara, "When I grow up, I want to shine so bright the whole world will see." She used to laugh and ruffle his hair, telling him he already did. But no one shines forever. Not without a fight. The official diagnosis came in early December. Acute lymphoblastic leukemia. Treatable, but aggressive. The doctors said it was lucky they'd caught it early, but lucky felt like an insult to Clara. She didn't feel lucky. She felt like the ground had vanished beneath her. What followed was a whirlwind of hospital visits, chemotherapy, blood tests, and bills. So many bills. Clara worked as much as she could, but there were only so many hours in a day, and Mason needed her more than ever. The first challenge was money. Insurance didn't cover everything. Medications, travel, time off work, it added up fast. Clara began selling things. The TV. Her wedding ring. The old piano her mother had left her. The second challenge was hope. Mason began to fade physically and emotionally. He stopped building rockets. Stopped talking about the stars. The once vibrant boy now stared out the window, silent and tired, like the light had gone out inside him. Clara tried everything. She stayed up all night researching diets and treatments. She wrote to charities, filled out grant forms, joined support groups. But what really broke her was the helplessness. Watching your child suffer is a pain that chews through the soul. One night, Mason asked her, "Mom, what if I don't get better?" She bit her lip hard enough to bleed before she could answer. "You will," she whispered. "Because you shine. And nothing can put out a real shine. Not even this." But she didn't believe it. Not really. Not until the night of the storm. The blizzard had knocked out the entire county's power grid. Roads were closed. Hospitals unreachable. Mason had spiked a fever, and his breathing had turned shallow and wheezy. Clara called 911, but they couldn't send help for hours. She ran to the attic, pulled down her mother's old kerosene lantern, the same one she'd held as a child during power outages. She wrapped Mason in every blanket she could find and placed the lantern beside his bed, praying the warmth and light might offer something, anything. Then she did something she hadn't done in years. She fell to her knees and prayed. Not for miracles. Not for escape. Just for strength. "Let me be the light he needs," she whispered. The storm raged. Mason coughed in his sleep. And in that dim, flickering glow, Clara found something she thought she'd lost, a fire inside her chest. The strength to keep going. The next morning, Clara woke to headlights in the driveway. A neighbor had driven through the storm in his old snowplow, having heard about Mason through a church friend. He brought food, medicine, and a generator. The town rallied over the next week. Donations poured in. A fundraiser at the school raised more than $12,000. A local news station aired their story, and a regional children's hospital offered to take Mason's case, free of charge. People she'd never met sent letters, prayers, and even hand-built rocket models for Mason. And slowly, miraculously, Mason began to smile again. He ate. He walked. He started reading about stars again. He even began drawing plans for a new rocket, this one he named the Shining. Because that's what he'd become. Not just a boy with cancer. Not a patient, not a victim. But a beacon. It took 18 months, 5 hospital stays, dozens of transfusions, and an unthinkable amount of willpower, but Mason went into remission. At his 12th birthday party, surrounded by his classmates, teachers, and the neighbors who had become like family, Mason lit a small lantern and placed it on the porch. "For every kid still fighting," he said, his voice small but unwavering. "So they know there's still light. Even on the darkest nights. The Shining isn't about being perfect. It's not about never falling or never feeling afraid. It's about rising. It's about holding onto the flicker of light inside you when everything else is dark. It's about finding the strength to be someone else's spark when they've lost their own. And maybe, just maybe, it's about believing that no matter how bad things get, there's always a way to shine."